For me, let love be my legacy.
And welcome to Emerson, to each of you. If you have visited us before, then welcome back to our sanctuary, where we are broadcasting live from Marietta, Georgia. If this is your first time with us, an extra special welcome to you. We are glad you chose to be part of our worship today and hope you find nourishment for your heart and mind here. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Bruce, Abby, and Matthew, for starting us off with that beautiful song. I'm Jeffrey Jacoby. I'm a member of the Emerson Choir as well as a part of the worship team. We are a non-creedal congregation and welcome a wide variety of theological and spiritual beliefs. We honor the inherent worth and dignity of each and every person, so no matter who you are, where you're from, what you believe, or who you love, you are welcome here. Today, we look forward to hearing from our very own Reverend Deborah Bennett as she talks to us about listening. Not just listening to the same sources that we always allow, but what about those other sources that exist in the margins of our everyday life? That special bubble that we all have around us. That bubble that's there when we feel the most comfortable. But what might you hear just outside of that bubble? Could there be a voice you never considered before? And are those voices worth listening to? Directly after the service today, please join us for our second hour activities. There will be things for everyone to enjoy no matter how old or young you are. We'll take some time to connect and get to know each other a little bit better. It's also a great time to share some of your own thoughts and experiences that today's service may inspire. On our homepage, emersonuu.org, you will see a link at the bottom of the order of service, so just scroll down there to the very bottom, and that's where the links are. Click whichever one you like, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. If we have your email info, then you can follow the link in the Emerson Notebook for this Sunday's service. Today's chalice lighting words are from Eric Walker Wickstrom. Here, today, in this place, and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. Please take a moment now to greet those with you this morning in person or online by offering our congregational affirmation. We need not think alike to love alike.
Good morning. It is so good to see you. I see you all are in nice, comfy chairs out there. Some of you are at your kitchen tables drinking that cup of joe. I see some picnic tables out there. Yep, some of you are in your garden, I can tell. You look pretty comfy. Fred Macy, how's that cup of English breakfast doing? Cheerio. I wish I could be joining you. Oh, I can't actually see them, can I? Okay, so don't worry, this isn't Zoom. I cannot see you. You do not have to run to go get your non-comfy clothes on. You are safe with us. I won't tell. But it is good to see you, and welcome to another Sunday morning at Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Reverend Deborah Bennett, and as always, it is such a joy to be here with you this morning. While we may not be able to see each other, at least I can't see you, it is vital that at these times, especially now more than ever, that we learn how to listen deeply to each other. Last week, we got to listen to some powerful voices of those who listened deeply to themselves and then were able to come out into the world and express who they were. And so I thank James and Alex and Alexandria for doing so with such sincerity and such humility. You have taught us all so much in your willingness to share. This week, we enter some listening waters that might be a little murky. It's that murky territory of listening to others. Not just any others, but those across the line, those with whom we may not agree, and yet who do share this planet with us. This morning, we also begin to explore what it means to listen at the margins, to explore those voices that are often overlooked or pushed aside or decentered in society. Now, these are big topics, and I by no means am going to even scratch deep under the surface with them in one morning, but we're going to make an attempt, so I hope you'll join us for the whole morning. Now, it's appropriate on this day of deep listening, this month of deep listening, that we do some acknowledgments. Last Monday, many counties and even many states acknowledged Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a day to acknowledge that the white colonial settlers were not the first ones here on this land. And the voices of the native peoples were virtually wiped out by those conquering settlers. And we can't change those actions, and we can't repair that damage with just one sentence or one acknowledgement. But I do believe strongly that by beginning to acknowledge over and over again and bring to our awareness their existence, that their voices can begin to rise up anew. So we have a beautiful ritual table this morning, and hopefully we can get a shot of this. This was a table that was created by Ann Mason and Wind Horsley, and they have included many items that represent the Indigenous people that occupied this land, the very land that I'm standing on and that Emerson occupies. It was the Cherokee Nations and the Muskogee Nations. So on our altar, you'll see several things. There is some corn, squash, and beans, known often as the Three Sisters. They were often planted together for this beautiful synergy. The beans would use the corn stalks to climb up, so no pole beans were needed. And the squash would spread around the ground to provide shade and to help block the weeds. And the beans provided nitrogen for the other plants. There's also some herbs representing the medicinal quality of herbs that Native peoples used for healing, including raspberry leaf and bear root, as well as tobacco. It was common to offer tobacco back to the land when something was taken, and also to only take every third plant. So if they were looking for a plant, they wouldn't just take all of the plants of that kind they needed, but take every third. What a wise idea. Tobacco also has a special place in Native culture. It is the herb of prayer, believed to have been placed on the earth by spirits to help us communicate with them and with nature. And Ann Mason has made some beautiful prayer ties for the table that include tobacco. Now, these were used by the Cherokee as well as other nations as a sacred prayer practice. And each tie is different, made by the person who made them, putting some tobacco in the tie and then saying a prayer as they did so. So thank you, Anne, for giving those prayers to us this morning. Wind offered her handmade rattle in honor of the common use of them by the Cherokee Nation in their singing and ceremony. The turkey feather represents the flying nations that symbolize prayers being lifted and taken to the Creator. And Wind also made us a medicine wheel, which we will keep on our chalice table as an ongoing land recognition for the Cherokee. The medicine wheel that she made uses the Cherokee traditional colors, white for north, yellow for east, red for south, and black for west. It's important to note that the center point where these cross, that's the place that is said where all things come together. So I'm going to invite us now to come together at those crossroads and join as we take in this altar and join in a prayer for our Indigenous nations. So I'm going to ask you, as you feel so inclined, to either close your eyes or have soft eyes and join me in this prayer of thanksgiving and appreciation and acknowledgement. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of all of our ancestors, great Creator, we recognize that we were not the first humans to occupy the land we occupy today. For hundreds and thousands of years, different nations of peoples lived, hunted, worked, created community, fought, and had times of peace. They too danced and sang. They gathered together for meals, and together they faced hardship and celebrated joys. They too fell in love, birthed babies, and mourned their dead. Great Spirit that connects us all, we recognize that another group of people called this land their sacred home. And today we acknowledge the Cherokee Nation and the Muskogee Nation of people and their ancestors, and their ancestors' ancestors. By calling on them today, we feel their presence here in our sanctuary, a presence that has always been here. We just needed to turn towards it. We pause to join our hearts to theirs in this ever-forming, interconnected web of existence and honor their presence here still now. We join with them in sorrow for the pain that they endured, for the harsh way in which they were ripped from their homes. And we offer this moment of silence and acknowledgement to them now. May our prayers be lifted up on the wings of the great birds and reach them, reach our ancestors to bring healing to them and to all of our descendants. Ho, may it be so. Please join us now. Actually, I should go ahead and acknowledge, sorry I didn't do this sooner, the drum that I'm holding, which I'll put back on the altar so you can see it, is a drum that was made by a Cherokee woman and I together over the course of 2 days of being together. So it was a gift from her to me, and I honor this in the Cherokee Nation today as well. So please, as you are able in body, and I know you are able in spirit, rise to our opening hymn. Let your voice be heard. The hymn this morning is "Do You Hear?"
Place where you stand, through the sky, through the land. Do you hear, in the heights, on the plains, in the vale, on the main, in the sun, in the rain? Do you hear, do you hear? Through the roar, through the rush, through the throng, through the crush, do you hear in the hush of your soul, hear the cry, fear the still, hear the heart's call to will, hear a sigh, startling trill, in your soul, in your soul. From the place where you stand to the outermost strand, do you hear, oh my friend? Do you hear, do you hear? All the dreams, all the dares, all the sighs, all the prayers, they are yours, mine and theirs. Do you
Hi there. I'm Noel Garwick, and this is a story for all ages. So today we're going to tell a story about a character I'm sure you guys know, and I'm going to see if you I'm going to see if you can guess. Okay. So this is a character. If you've seen movies, if you've read books, if people still do that, if you watch television, you've probably either seen this character or someone based on him. This is a character that had about a dozen close friends that would follow him around, and they would do acts that some would consider miracles, right? What's that? Not Bruce King, no. This is a character who famously had meals at a table that has been immortalized in paintings, right? And this is also a character who tragically died, but that many believe will one day return when his people need him most. Can you guess who it is? That's right, it's King Arthur of Camelot and the Round Table. So King Arthur, if you don't know, he was king of Camelot, right? And Camelot was a great kingdom. They were great people, and he had his Knights of the Round Table. Okay, the table was round because he wanted everyone to be equal, and they all shared the same beliefs. They all held the same things dear to their heart, and that was being kind and virtuous for everyone, right? So, despite that, King Arthur still had problems, and that was that at night he would have dreams, horrible dreams. And so he went to his wizard Merlin to go ask him for advice. And he said, "Merlin, I've come to you because I cannot sleep. I have horrible dreams." And Merlin said, "The one where you're falling from the sky." No, not that one. The one where you're being chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but you can't move. It's like you're going through quicksand. No, not that one. Oh, the one where you're back in school, and the teacher calls on you and you stand up and you don't know the answer, and you realize that you're only dressed in your underwear. Not that one, Merlin, no. Well, sometimes. No, the dream I'm talking about, there's a dark cloud, there's unrest outside of the kingdom, and I fear that maybe there's dark magic at work. We need to go out and find where it is, and I need your help. So they ventured out, they saddled up their horses, and they trotted along, and they started talking to the people. They talked to blacksmiths, they talked to merchants, they talked to woodsmen, and woodswomen, of course, and they finally came to the last person, an old lady that lived in the woods, and they talked to her, and they couldn't find anything wrong with anyone. Everyone seemed to be getting on okay, everyone seemed to be happy, and King Arthur looked at Merlin and he said, "What is wrong? What is troubling me? There must be something, right?" And Merlin said, "Hold on, I have an idea. I want you to close your eyes, I want you to focus on this old lady that lives in the woods that we just spoke with, and I want you to think about what it's like to live her life." So King Arthur did, and he closed his eyes. And while he did, Merlin pulled out a mirror from his pocket, a magic mirror, and he shined it on Arthur. And slowly, Arthur started to change. He bent over, his hair grew long and white, his skin took on age, and his joints began to ache and creak. And within a moment, he was a spitting image of the old lady in the woods. And he began to follow her around and kind of do the things she did throughout the day, doing the washing, which was hard because, she was older and frail, nearly 100. And as he did that, cooking, all these other things, he realized that the things that he took for granted or that he had servants doing weren't as easy for her to do. So they said, "Okay, Merlin, this is a good idea. Let's go around." So they started going to all the other people in the kingdom. And they did that same trick. And Arthur lived their life for a little bit. And they started going to the animals in the kingdom, the squirrels, the coyotes, the rabbits, the snakes and mongoose. Is that the plural of mongoose? Mongoose? Okay. And he just lived their lives, right? And at the end of the day, Arthur went back to Merlin's laboratory to discuss it, right? And Merlin said, "Well, do you feel like you understand now how to make things better?" And Arthur said, No, everyone has different problems. chickens don't like the snakes because they steal their eggs. And the snakes don't like the mongoose because they steal the snake eggs. And the rabbits don't like the coyotes because they eat them. And the coyotes don't like the rabbits because they're too fast and it makes it hard to eat them. And he said, everyone seems to have problems, and I don't know how to solve them. And Merlin shook his head and he said, yes. And he said, well, Arthur, this is something they have lived with their entire lives for years and years and for generations. How would you be able to solve them after living in their shoes for an afternoon or a night or even longer? And Arthur said, okay, I understand, but that doesn't make me any happier. And Merlin said, well, it's not your job to be happy, it's your job to listen and to understand. And King Arthur said, okay, I think I'm starting to understand. So even though we have this round table, we want everyone to be equal. No one sits at the head. Not everyone has equal needs, right? That's right, said Merlin. And continued Arthur, that means that if we want everything to be fair, then we need to be listening to everyone's individual needs, right? And Merlin said yes. And Arthur said, I don't know if I can do it. It sounds too complicated. And Merlin told him, well, you just have to try. And it won't be perfect, but it'll make you a better king. And maybe your nightmares will go away. So King Arthur nodded, and he went to sleep. And that night, he didn't have any bad dreams. And for the rest of the time, until his tragic death, he tried to do that every once in a while. Go out to the kingdom, listen to different voices, invite them into Camelot, and have them come to speak. And things were never perfect, but slowly they started to get better. And Arthur didn't have nightmares anymore, except for the one where he woke up in class in his underwear. So thank you for listening. Please join me for the song of dedication.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind and fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thus do we promise to each other.
Thank you, Noel, for that wonderful story of the Round Table. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Nell McLaughlin, and I serve as a member of Emerson's Pastoral Care Team. The Pastoral Care Team members are available as listening ears and caring hearts to support you during challenging times. You can contact us at our email address, pastoralcare@emerson.org. At this time in our service, we pause to share personal joys, sorrows, and concerns. Each Sunday, we light our vigil bowl. It represents the light of hope for the peaceful resolution of all conflicts on our planet. And it honors all dedicated people who serve us, including those on the front line of the COVID-19 virus battle. Today, Reverend Deborah will light our candles. As I share this one joy, it takes a village. When Claudia and Greg Hebert moved into their home in Atlanta in 2014, they bought a baby grand piano and donated their stately old upright piano to Emerson. That piano, a wedding gift from Claudia to Greg, moved all over the world with them and recently found its forever home in the big family worship room. Thanks to James Poteet's family and friends, it also now has a new piano bench. Thank you all, Claudia, Greg, and James. We know there are also joys, sorrows, and concerns left unspoken today. As Reverend Deborah lights candles for them, please feel free to speak aloud the names of anyone you are holding closely in your hearts this morning. Let us all send our heartfelt caring intentions to all people by offering the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. The words are projected here and also printed in your order of service. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May they be free from harm and suffering. May they be well in body, heart, and mind. May they be at peace. Blessed be.
Thank you, Mary Nell. And thank you, Pastoral Care Team, for being there for this community in all the ways that you are. I'm going to invite us into a time of centering now. So if you have not yet today found your breath, I'm going to invite you to take one of those really big, deep breaths. Go ahead, Jeffrey. Let it out. That kind of felt good. This time, take a really deep breath and find your body. Maybe give it a little shake. Shake it up a little bit. And on the next breath, see if you can locate your heart, maybe even putting your hand on your heart and feeling your heartbeat. And then as you feel ready, perhaps close your eyes or just have your eyes be softly focused. I'm going to share some words with you this morning from Marge Piercy. It's a piece entitled Counsel.
We must sit down and reason together.
We must sit down.
Men standing want to hold forth. They rain down upon faces lifted.
We must sit down on the floor, on the earth, on stones, and mats and blankets.
There must be no front to the speaking, no platform, no rostrum, no stage or table.
We will not crane to see who is speaking.
Perhaps we should sit in the dark.
In the dark, we could utter our feelings.
In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest.
In the dark, we could not see who speaks, and only the words would say what they say.
Thus saying what we feel and what we want, what we fear for ourselves and each other.
Into the dark, perhaps we could begin.
To begin, to listen.
Perhaps we should talk in groups small enough for everyone to speak.
Perhaps we should start by speaking softly.
Those that are quiet must learn to dare to speak.
Those that are loud must bother to listen.
Those that are quiet must learn to say, I think this is so.
Those that are loud must learn to stop dancing solos on the ceiling.
After each speaks, she or he or they will repeat a ritual phrase.
It is not I who speaks, but the wind.
Wind blows through me.
Long after me
Is the wind. How hushed the wood on a windless night, how silent the summer breeze, how still the air as I linger there. Then the night begins to sing. The night begins to sing. Be still, young traveler, listen to the song stirring in the wood. Be still, young pilgrim, stop and look before you journey on. There are bright stars in the heavens that you cannot see in the sun. There are symphonies that surround you. Then the hush of evening comes. Will you see them? Will you hear them? Be still. Look up and listen. How will you know what wondrous beauty the night beholds until you look up and listen? There are bright stars in the heavens that you cannot see in the sun. There are symphonies that surround you when the hush of evening comes. Will you see them? Will you hear them? Be still. Look up and listen. Be still and listen. Listen. Listen.
Abby, that was absolutely gorgeous. Thank you. Thank you so very much. As is often the case, I feel like the anthem is the sermon, and we're good to go now. We can just take that message and go home, but I will add a few words. So I'm going to begin this morning with a story told to me by Emerson member George Clear. And it's a story about a former congregation or a church from his hometown. So the story goes like this. One day, a parishioner made a generous donation of pews to the church. And everyone was very excited about the donation because it was a small church with, obviously, a small budget. The church had been setting money aside so that it could purchase the pews or something because the folding chairs that they had been using were exceedingly uncomfortable. And they were a source of numerous complaints among everyone in the congregation. But they never seemed to be able to gather together just enough money to purchase the pews. So the pews arrive, everyone's excited, much joy is happening, and the church board realizes that they had enough money now in this meager church pew fund that they could purchase some brand new cushions for the pews, because the pews were pretty hard. So they call a congregational meeting, and everyone was excited to learn that there was enough money reserved to buy the new cushions. And everyone was speculating about how much more comfortable the pews would be with their new cushions. They were very happy. Well, when the day came of the congregational meeting, the board was prepared. They brought lots of options for different styles and sizes and colors of the cushions. And the atmosphere in the sanctuary was electric with anticipation of the plush, long-awaited comfort that soon would be enjoyed by everybody. As the meeting progressed, it became apparent that there was not universal consensus about the perfect cushiony bliss that they were all going to enjoy. Some of the church members wanted blue cushions, and others preferred red. A vote was taken, but no decision was reached because it was a 50-50 vote. The congregation was split right down the middle, and no resolution was reached that day. And no one seemed willing to compromise. Conflict arose. And eventually, and this is a true story told to me by George, that in this particular church, the church literally split down the middle. Half of the congregation left the church. The other half remained, and guess what? They purchased some blue cushions. After recounting the story to me, George added this. He said, "It's been many years since I've moved away, but I often wonder how much enjoyment that much smaller congregation got from sitting on those blue cushions without so many of their old fellow churchgoers there to share the experience." It's a funny story in a way, and really a sad one, because what went wrong? Well, I believe we all know this experience far too well. Now, maybe not over church cushion pews. We have nice comfy chairs here. But I imagine we all have had those conversations at some point in our own lives when we were on one side of a topic and there were others across the line on the other side. And instead of finding a resolution, that we chose to leave the conversation, or we watched as they chose to leave the conversation. In either case, the result was severing, was a cutting of the relationship, and really a severing of the very fabric of our being. Now, perhaps we weren't even conscious at the time or aware of the wounds that it caused, and perhaps we were aware of them but just put them in the closet. Perhaps we thought, well, since we were right, fine, I'll just leave and go over here. Leave those others that were wrong on the other side of that line. But when Martin Luther King Jr. said that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, and when the Unitarian Universalist seventh principle was written to affirm the interconnected web of existence of which we are all a part, they were meant to imply to all of us. And all of us are affected when we are severed from each other. Unfortunately, too often our response to conflict is to retreat to the safety of our own space. I call it our own little bubbles, you know? You probably have one. Bruce, you got a bubble? It's right there. It's right there. Bruce brought it with him this morning. We probably all walk around in our own little bubbles. It's that place where we don't have to connect with others who may think differently than us. And it's becoming more clear that technology is not helping in our ability to connect, at least not with those outside our own bubbles. With the creation of ever more sophisticated, unique filter bubbles for each of us, we are being pushed further and further into a world of separation. Now, if you haven't watched this Netflix documentary that came out, it's called Social Dilemma, The Social Dilemma. I highly, highly recommend you watch it, but I will warn you, it's really quite disturbing. We are now, we meaning those of us in the non-tech industry, are now learning what those in the tech industry actually have known for a very long time. The internet is not this unbiased, equal opportunity tool for us to share, nor are any of those other social media tools. You and I may do the exact same Google search, put the same things in that Google search bar, and yet we will not get the same answers. And it's interesting, I was talking to my husband about this the other day, of just saying, have you noticed that you're getting different answers to things since we moved to Georgia than when we lived in the Northeast? And he said, yep. I was like, all right, our algorithm has changed now that we live in Georgia from the Northeast. So Google, or whatever search engine you use, is not just giving us a list of the most popular links, it's actually giving us the information it thinks we want, based on everything it knows about us, from our location, to our past searches, to our buying habits, to our social connections. And it does this, according to this film, which was created by some of the people that created this technology. They said they do this so that they can force us to go down rabbit holes and click, 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 scroll, 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 because each click and each opportunity to scroll some more generates income. And that's the name of the game. So if we like something, we click on it, we get more of that something, and more of that something, and more of that something. And this, my friends, is making it really difficult to listen to others. It's hard enough to listen to someone whom we do not agree, but it's even harder when we're talking to someone about topics and their source material is totally different from ours. And I know you've had that experience. You're talking to somebody and they start spouting off facts, and you're like, whoa, where did those come from? Well, they came from the internet. They came from news media. They came from their bubble. I recently read a book. It was called Talking Across the Divide. It was by a man named Justin Lee. He's got one of his chapters is titled, quote, "But I can't talk to those people," exclamation point, end quote. And I know we have all thought that. I can't talk to those people. But here's the thing. Those people that we're thinking that about, they're thinking that about us. And it is those two facts together that are the huge problem. It's not just social media, of course. We have all grown up in some sorts of bubbles. And we mostly live our life like Jim Carrey in Truman, another one. Young folks, if you haven't seen Truman, everybody see Truman. We create echo chambers, right? There are places that are filled. We fill our echo chambers up with people that will nod their heads at our rants. They'll commiserate with our frustrations. They'll echo back our solutions, and our solutions are almost always about changing the other. Justin Lee has this great line in his book. He says, "The issues you care about, the problems in the outside world that make you long for the reassurance of your bubble, cannot be resolved solely from within your bubble." Darn, because I like my bubble. It's nice, it's comfy in here. I got some English breakfast tea, and I'm all good. Now, one thing you can count on when encountering a Unitarian Universalist, and I know you know what I'm about to say, because if you've been in this faith at any amount of time, this has been you. But when you encounter a Unitarian Universalist, it won't be long till you hear IWOD. What's IWOD? Come on. I, inherent, worth, and dignity, right? I call it the IWOD. It's the IWOD statement. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It's our first principle. And I know we mean it, and I know we really want to mean it, and I know it is actually hard. Often we use this phrase, sitting comfortably in our bubbles, as a way to signify our good intentions, to show that we honor all humans across race, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, physical and mental ability, class, theological belief, and ... political and ideological belief, kinda, yeah, but not really. Because that's when it gets hard. How do I affirm someone's inherent worth and dignity if I do not recognize them affirming everyone else's? Isn't it kind of unfair if I recognize your inherent worth and dignity, but you're out there not recognizing others? I will say it's probably the question I get most from people about our principles. They say, isn't there a line? And if others go beyond the line, do they still get to be recognized as having inherent worth and dignity? Well, when I'm asked that question, I usually offer two responses. First, I say this: affirming someone's inherent worth and dignity is not the same as condoning a harmful stance they may have. So taking those two apart. And second, if you find yourself tempted to disenfranchise someone of their inherent worth and dignity, you may need to listen to them more deeply. I loved Noel's story this morning. It was, again, could have just been the whole sermon as his story. Such a beautiful example. Listening more deeply. What does it take to listen more deeply? King Arthur couldn't just stay in his little bubble and think, oh, I got that. I see those people out there. Sure, they're different from me. What's the problem? We have to not just listen to find the places we disagree, but listen until we can find the places where our own heart begins to open to them. It's not the same as condoning. It's not the same as agreeing. But it is the same as sharing a heart connection. Our minister emeritus, Reverend Jeff Jones, would call this compassionate conversations. Reverend Jeff teaches this communication style, and it's a practice, really. It's also been known as nonviolent communication. 20 or so of us got to spend 4 weeks learning and practicing this form of listening with him, and we are grateful. If you're listening this morning, Reverend Jeff, thank you for that. Central to the practice are two elements. First is the willingness to see others' humanity. And that's what King Arthur was instructed to do, see the other's humanity. And second, to value the other person's needs as being equal to our own. So they might not be the same, but they're as worthy. This is supported in the practice by listening to the feelings of others and trying to identify their needs. So instead of listening for how do I think about this and what's my response going to be, it's listening to understand. In acknowledging and reflecting back to the other person what we are hearing them say, they are freed from having to hold so tightly onto their position. And it actually allows them to hear and allows us to hear as well. We get to hear each other more deeply because we are feeling heard. I got to practice compassionate communication this summer with my brother-in-law, a very conservative Christian minister. Now, when I had first begun seminary, I could tell that he and his wife grew more interested in engaging with me, I assume figuring that we would have lots in common now. They live many states away, and so we only see each other maybe 1 or 2 times each year. And as the years progressed, I could tell that their curiosity about this thing called Unitarian Universalism was growing, and occasionally they dipped their toe in and asked me a question, but nothing too serious. Well, finally, this past summer, my brother-in-law and I found ourselves at a table all alone at our niece's wedding, his niece's wedding. Everyone was off dancing and having dessert, and somehow we ended up alone on the picnic table in the dark. And so he turned to me, and he took a deep breath, bless his heart, and he said, "So, I've been wanting to ask you. I looked on the website and I really couldn't find the answer. So what do you Unitarian Universalists believe?" It was a sincere question, and I give him a lot of credit. He came to the table with a sincere curiosity to understand. After I gave him my elevator speech, which included IWOD, the Inherent Worth and Dignity Starter Point, he quickly went to the issue of abortion and right to life. He countered that inherent worth and dignity should include the fetus. Now, we had only just begun the conversation, like 1 minute, 2 minutes into it, and there it was. There was this topic which we probably were not going to find a lot of common ground on, and that would have been easy to escalate to conflict. So I took a breath, And I said, I can tell that's an important topic for you by the way you brought it up right away. It's important for a lot of folks. And then I paused, just watching for his response. He nodded. So I said, given it's one of the most controversial topics for many, how about if we don't start there? And I suggested we find some common ground places first. And I wasn't sure what he would say, but to my delight, he agreed very quickly. I actually think he was a little relieved to not have to go there as well. And so we had this beautiful discussion. We talked about justice work a lot, about the justice work they were doing in their congregation or their church, and what we do here at our congregation, and how that justice work was stemmed from our faith. And we talked about theology a little bit. And when we got to the question of heaven and hell, I could tell we had entered a tricky place for him. But he listened to me anyway, very quiet and very sincerely, and he took in what I said as best he could. There was a point where he started to look concerned about my answers, and who can fault him? Given the information that he had and his sincere beliefs he held, I imagine that what I was saying could have been painful for him to hear. Here was his brother's wife saying that she did not hold a belief about things that were very core to his own faith and his own worldview. So it was getting late, and we thanked each other, and we decided to end the conversation there. No one had raised their voice or tried to convince the other of anything. I'm sure neither of us changed a stance about our faith. But I do believe we both grew as ministers that day, and really as people that day, in listening to one another. Justin Lee points out that if our goal for the conversation is to change someone, be prepared to fail. But if our goal is to gain understanding, that we can do. It's a real 180 from what a lot of us were taught about talking, right? In his book, Justin Lee offers some real practical suggestions for listening across the lines, or across the divide, as he calls it. So I'm going to share a few of those with you right now for the next time you might be entering into a conversation where all parties do not agree, maybe even in a few hours. Get out your notebooks. Number 1, remember everyone thinks they are right, okay? No one wants to look foolish. No one wants to be wrong or feel manipulated by someone else. People hold their beliefs based on certain information they have been given and how they have processed that information based on their own life circumstance. We each form our opinions with a firm belief that we have the correct information and the correct interpretation of that information and ample evidence to corroborate our beliefs. That's so for everybody. Number 2, Justin Lee says, remember that desire to change each other's minds, it goes both ways. Everyone is the protagonist of their own story and views themselves as the one who is needed to save the other from wrong thinking. All right? We need to recognize that in any conversation, there are multiple storylines that are being enacted each time we have a dialogue. The third thing Justin Lee offers is this. He says, debate and argument doesn't change minds, but dialogue can, because it's not about winning, it's about understanding. The skill is to really hear what is important to the other person. That becomes dialogue. That becomes a two-way conversation. Now, I'm going to add one thing that Justin Lee did not mention, but I feel needs to be added, and that is number 4. Deep listening is not just trying to listen to those we disagree with. It is being willing to actively search out and center the voices of those least listened to. Sometimes the deepest listening arises when we ask the question, whose voice is not in the room right now? What or whom am I not hearing? It is too often in our society that we give the privilege of the mic to the majority voice over and over and over again. For example, did you know that in Congress, There's just 25% of the Senate and 23% of the House are made up of women, while 51% of our country are women. Of the 100 senators currently in Congress, people that have so much power over how we live our lives, only 3 are black, only 3 are Asian American, and only 4 are Hispanic American. The rest are white. And in fact, 72 out of 100 senators are white men. If the Senate were to reflect the population, that number would be 31, less than half of what it is. When voices are heard at a debate about a topic on the Senate floor, whose voice is being heard most? And does that matter? Well, those in the majority often say it doesn't. What's the big deal? I can speak for everybody. But ask the voices on the margins, and I will guarantee you a different answer. Those with the most power often get the most listening. And as our centering said today so beautifully, those that are often quiet dare to speak. Those that are often loud recognize the need to create space for others. If we can become aware of that, even in the smallest of settings, we're not members of the Senate, at least not yet. Thinking about running, Bruce. Actually, I'm thinking about voting for you. But if we can become aware of that, even in the smallest of settings, we will begin to become aware of who is not speaking. And we're going to work to support those voices to be heard so that we have a full understanding, not a winning, a full understanding of what needs to be done. Listening at the margins requires that we listen more deeply to those that have been and continue to be underrepresented in government and places of power, systemically blocked from reaching places of power and influence, and whose lives have been often pushed to the margins. By centering these voices, we begin to recognize that we have not had all the information we need to come to the conclusions we have come to. I'm going to end this morning with a message I received from James Poteet about listening across the lines. He tells this wonderful story. He says, every Tuesday morning, I call my grandmother. Let that be. Can everybody write that down? Grandmothers, Tuesday morning. Every Tuesday morning, I call my grandmother. She and I are very dear to each other, but I never know how the conversation will go. Some weeks it's all fun. We may talk about gardening or the fascinating life she leads. Other weeks are challenging. She often praises people in power whose actions directly contradict the teachings of her faith. But each Tuesday, I listen. I listen to everything she has to say patiently and graciously, and she does the same for me. I have never spoken the words, "We need not think alike," to love alike to her, but the maxim guides my speech and my actions. So my friends, we need not think alike to love alike. And so may you go forth this day and all days, listening deeply, with a desire for understanding, with the willingness to center the margins, and with an unwavering desire to love. Blessed be. Please rise and join us in our closing hymn, which I actually don't know what it is. Let's see, what is it? Oh, we're going to build a new way. Awesome, let's do it.
We are building a new way.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building
Thanks again, Abby and Bruce and Matt, for that great song. So since today we've been talking all about listening, I hope you have enjoyed listening to our service. And if you would consider making a monetary contribution to our congregation so that we can continue to bring you more of these interesting, inspiring, and important topics here at Emerson, we would really appreciate it. By your commitment of time, attention, and resources, together we make this community. 678-553-9485 to text your gift or pledge. We appreciate your support.
Oh, keep going. They didn't have enough time to text. Go back. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. Quick, get your phone, everybody. Write the number down. We need your support. And we are thankful for your support in all the ways. Bruce is just looking at me. Read my mind, Bruce. I love Bruce. I love Bruce. Oh, and thank you, everyone. I want to just say thank you all for joining us this morning. Thank you, Abby and Matthew. Your voices are just heavenly. I just want you to just come to my house every morning and sing to me. Jeffrey, thank you for your role in this service. It's wonderful as always. Mary Nell for our joys and sorrows. Noel for a fantastic story. Up in the booth, we have Dominic and Claude at our AV table, and Ed Cosper, our always kind and wonderful production manager. Oh yeah, and Bruce. Couldn't do it without you, Bruce. That's right. So I like to close with these words from Martin Luther King Jr. that I know we all know, and they are just so true, that in a real sense, all of life is interrelated. All people are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. So may you go forth, listen deeply for that inescapable network that connects you to everyone else. Blessed be.
Please join me now in our chalice extinguishing. The words are printed in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
Please join us for second hour activities. The links are in the order of service as well as on the website. And join us for our congregational meeting at 12:30. Hit it, Bruce.